Up next, I would like to welcome Zach and David to the stage, and they're going to have a lovely chat about how to maximize your creative win rate. So welcome to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here today. Myself and David, we're here to talk to you about how we maximize our creative win rate in UA. Brief introduction, I'm Zach, I'm the co-founder of Miri Growth. I have a background being an internal UA and creative team, and about 7 years ago, co-founded and built up Miri Growth, a performance marketing agency, which we'll talk about in a minute.
All right, I'm David. I've been part of Bytro for the last 6 years. Started as a junior, made my way up, and yeah, you can find me now in London talking to lovely Zach.
A little bit about Miri. We're a performance marketing agency. We work a lot with mobile games to help them grow through user acquisition and creative strategy. And a big part of that is the creative strategy, which is what we're here to talk to you about today. We work a lot with game publishers across a range of genres as well. So we've collected a lot of learnings over the time. And a little bit about Bytro.
Yeah, so Bytro was founded back in 2009. It's been part of the Stillfront group for more than a decade, based in Hamburg. And we specialize in LTS. So you might be wondering, what the hell is LTS? So we like to coin this term a long-term strategy. So if you think about a game like Risk in real time, up to 100 players in the same map, that's more or less the idea. These are the most notable titles. So hopefully you've seen an ad, maybe you clicked it, maybe you have your game, maybe you have one of the games installed, so that is it.
Nice. And to kind of set a bit of context for anyone who's managing UA, anyone who's growing a game, you know how critical creative is. Critical in a sense that it can change the trajectory of a game's profitability and scale and growth. A lot of that we see comes through hero creatives. These are creatives which redefine half your CPI, maintain your LTVs, and help you scale across a range of channels. These are hard to find. You have to fail a lot in order to find them. And once you do find them, they don't last forever. So you're constantly fighting creative fatigue as you're trying to scale up your game and find new winners. So generally we see, it can range a lot, but we see around 4 to 8 weeks that a hero creative can last until it starts to fatigue and you need to find that new win. So I'm not sure for you, David, how that looks, the ratio of your win rates and creative fatigue.
I think that's probably, in range and in line. So I actually wanted to connect with a little bit of my presentation or introduction. Since I started as a junior, also my job description changed over the years, right? And I find myself now, I started as a pure UA manager. I've dabbled with creatives and I've been focusing on the creative side a little bit more. And this feels like my day-to-day. So it's basically trying to delay this fatigue as much as possible while you work to try to find that new hero. So trying to make this period as long as possible while of the creative fatigue, obviously. And try to shorten the period until you find a new hero creative.
Yeah, absolutely. I think an ideal scenario is you've got your backlog of heroes, but you're not always in an ideal scenario in the world of UA. So we're here today to talk about a few strategies we've learned over time. We worked together with Bytro for about 6 months, I think. Yeah. Across finding new creative winners. So we've got some long-term strategies which we've learned over the years across genre as well, about adapting your creative strategy based off of the performance you've got in time. So where UA is today, how that dictates your next month and quarter of creative production. Improving UGC, so splitting out, focusing on winning UGC concepts versus animation and gameplay concepts. And then we've got some case studies looking forward and a bit more present on trying to improve your win rate through AI iterations, as well as predicting what can be a high-performing ad before you go into production. And then if we've got time, a bit of an open discussion. Mm-hmm. So we'll start a little bit on your production strategy based on web performances. So if we're looking at where our win rate is at the moment and our performance on the vertical axes, where all of us want to be is in that top right stage where we've got a strong win rate and performance is good. Where we see these cases and you're building out for scale, there's a few things which we've learned over time which can help you stay in that quartile for as long as possible. We've got a 40-60 ratio split between new concepts and iterations. You've got to maintain your safe bet. If you're going for scale, your creative fatigue is going to kick in faster. So you've got to get some safe bets where you're iterating on your high-performing concepts, and then focusing on your new concept exploration to keep exploring for that new winner. Top left quadrant is more of an interesting one. Your win rate may not be good, but your game's in a good place. Seasonality is performing well, so you've got a bit of breathing room. This case, we see that focusing really on your new concept direction can be what can help get you into that top left quartile. And therefore thinking a bit more outside the box, so not necessarily focusing on what competitors are doing, but maybe trying to break the mold a little bit instead of fitting in the box of what works. And then these two bottom scenarios where we don't necessarily want to sit, where performance is below target or significantly below target. One of our key strategies we explore is revisiting past winners. This is obviously relevant for a game which has been around for a long period of time. Sometimes these heroes can really be brought to life again through a new execution style. So you can go from UGC to gameplay to CGI style concepts. And at the same time, when you're in this danger zone, therefore looking a little bit at what is working in the market, so focusing on that competitor angle can be what can get you back into that positive zone and scaling up again. So yeah, outside of this mix of performance and your win rate, is there anything else which dictates strategy for you?
I think in general, this dictates strategy a lot. I mean, we don't have this, I mean, looking at this, it's a very cool matrix, and we kind of approach it this way as well. Not necessarily. We have the framework established and documented and everything, but this is more or less what it is. I would add a couple of things. So one is seasonality, something that is not reflected here. Sometimes you have to change this kind of strategy a little bit because we just went through Q5. Hopefully it went well for you. I mean, it's a period that all of us, at least in marketers in gaming, we love it, and hopefully it went well for you guys. But you have to take into account, right? And you can not only use this all the time and forget about seasonality that comes into play and might change your strategy for that specific time of the year. Some things that also came to mind is Black Friday, where you might not be able to test as much, and those sort of things. The other thing is channel mix. So this might not be applicable to every channel, or you might have to follow this strategy depending on what you're at with the channel. It might be that you are on a different quadrant for AppLovin because you are very strong in EGC and you're covered on the right for Meta and TikTok and such. So it can also be adapted by and differentiated by the platforms that are working and not working for you at the same time.
Yeah, I guess with last weekend with TikTok's news, we could have woken up today with a very different creative strategy.
Yeah, this was not applicable yesterday on TikTok for sure.
So.
Yeah. But today you can apply it again.
Exactly. So that's more of an overarching strategy which we advise over time. And looking at UGC, so taking this example where you know that UGC works for you, you may have found some hero creative, is how can you take things to the next level? So between Miri and Bytro along with David, UGC is actually not a route which we're testing together, so I think it's kind of interesting for us to also talk about it. And this is what we've learned over time of trying to build out your constant refresh of finding new hero creators within the world of UGC. Starts off with the creator. We see that the creator themselves can have a really big impact on performance, maybe quite stating the obvious. But having then a nice process for making sure that you've tested out that, like a new creator which you're exploring. There was always a bit of work going involved in onboarding a new creator. So you're starting off with sourcing, production, testing out some, it's a little bit messed up, testing out at least 5 concepts or creatives with them, including a few intro tests as well. And a key part of that is we see of like testing out your hero concept with a new creator as well, allowing you to categorize then into your winner standards, which can be for that, let's say, scaling up for Q5, you may not want to only rely on one creator. So you have a bit of a mix of talent which you could work with. And then alongside that, we've got this concept testing matrix too. So we maybe focus on it too much, maybe not, but like this idea of you've got your test winners and your test results, and then you've got the BAU results as well. So what actually scales and what actually drives performance. Unfortunately, they're not always holding hands. Sometimes they're a bit askew. So we have this matrix built out of testing a new concept. So if it's a concept which didn't win in testing but shows potential, which for us we suggest, or we look at anything that perform within 80% of your KPI. In most cases, that KPI is IPM. If it doesn't have potential, take those learnings away, move on. If it does show some potential, this is where we see that we can take some time to iterate on it and kind of get it out of that threshold into becoming a scalar. And then if it did win and it is a concept that then went on to scale, we want to make the most of it. So we have this framework we call the Creative Winner Action Plan, where we'll tick through and jump straight into iterations to then make sure that when fatigue kicks in, we've got something else in the backlog to bump it up. So a mix of hook iterations of the scene, the motivation, some copy, voiceover iterations, background music, length, and so on. So a bit of a framework of building out your pipeline and having winners ready to roll out all times. And if we have a winner that then doesn't scale, it's thinking about how we can reevaluate it based off of our learnings of what is scaling, instead of reinventing the concept completely. It's how can we tweak it based off of maybe that single intro that already works at the moment to then become a scalar.
I would actually add a couple more to these. So, and talking about EGC specifically, one of the things that you can add is localization. So, and I think that is one important one that could be mentioned. So if you have a concept, it makes sense, and it is working well, it makes sense to localize it to other languages so you can explore that in your usual channels. Mm-hmm. The second is playing a little bit with subtitles, with the colors, with the fonts. That is a small change that can also deliver some, because if it's UGC, right, you're going to have someone talking, so it's good to have subtitles, and you can play with that a little bit as well. The placement of or how you show the creator could also be cool to tweak, so you can have a green screen, not green screen, squared, put it on top, put it on the bottom. Those sort of things you can play with. And finally, and this is a little bit specific to ours, and I'm giving, but it can be applied to other games as well. Our games have the ability of expressing storylines or showing storylines, right? So if you have a concept that says, hey, this is the best country you can play in a certain game, you can take the same concept, keep the same concept, but apply to all the different possibilities that you have in the game. Yep. So if you have different conferences you can pick, hey, let me take this, and if I showed the US, let me now show Spain, Portugal, whatnot. And this can be applied to other games, right? Other mechanics, tools, characters that you can play. So you can expand a little bit on that as well.
Do you have any learnings of, like, for example, in the US, you're always going to be starting with the US, or is it quite diverse in terms of the sort of, when you've got that geolocation as a variable?
Yeah, so actually this, I'm going a little bit off topic, but actually this actually influenced the way that we changed our tutorial map, because we saw that US users were picking the US, and they liked all the ads that were showing in the US. Mm-hmm. And the idea spun out of creating a tutorial map where you can play specific states in that, and then we connected that to the marketing and brought it back.
So your creative strategy, your creative learnings can also then dictate your in-game development.
Yeah, and increase the win rate with that, which is the topic that we're talking about there, but connecting it
where the magic
a little bit with the thing,
Cool, I feel like we've got a lot to maybe still try and get through. But so another topic when we're looking at gameplay and animation concepts as well, to maybe narrow down, we've got two routes: finding those new hero concepts, so concept ideation, which we'll get to in a moment, and on the first side is improving your hit rates of iterations. We did this case study at the end of last year, building out some learnings on AI iterations. So this is, I'm not going to go through in detail, but just a bit of a cheat sheet of how we see, like starting with AI as a topic of how that can impact our creative strategy and our creative production and testing as well. Like, what are some tactics which we can use to then iterate on an already proven concept? So that's split across video assets, audio assets, and static as well. And I think we were having a bit of a discussion on this earlier as well, of like, we went in with like AI as the topic, what can we get out of that? And it was a kind of an interesting contrast of like, you see AI as more of the tool and just something at your disposal as opposed to
Yeah, it was interesting to
point.
see that you approached it as a whole framework while we saw it, hey, okay, we have the AI, let's see what AI offers and what we can do with it. And this more focuses on AI is something that we can explore as a different thing. So let's use it and build a framework to come up with different types of, well, everything that you can see here. So a little bit of different approaches for sure.
Yeah.
But also to see the differences, yeah.
Yeah, it was very nice to learn it together. So we did some tests. This is like also another matrix we built out of those learnings over time of what drives high impact versus low impact. So naturally, skewing your production to these higher impact iterations is what's going to drive up your win rate overall as well. And then we have some results as well from the tests we did together. So we went through, these are like human ideated ideas of what to iterate on a winning concept with AI execution as well. So this was taking a hero concept, iterating on the backgrounds. You can see there's a lot of variability you can get in it with less of a lift compared to building those assets yourself. Actually, in this case, drove 36% IPM. We'll move quickly through to show some other examples. There's sound effects. You may not think that sound effects has a big impact. I think by channel, we didn't get a lot of variety as well. By channel, it can vary a lot as to what drives that sort of impact. In this case, I think we had 17% increase in CTR. The IPM was a bit less impacted, so less of like an immediate win, but definitely a key learning to take away. And I think this one, maybe we were discussing as well, of like, you may not think that these, like a small asset in the map, for example, the vehicles here, can have a big impact on overall performance on your IPM as well. But we actually saw this 12% increase in IPM. Sorry, trying to rattle through to make sure we've got enough time to cover off the last topics. So this was something we did last year. We wanted to do a bit of a recap for anyone we hadn't shared this with. Some of those takeaways, we saw an impact. Naturally, you saw those results. They definitely drove, they allowed us to find new winners. Unfortunately, this is actually something that negated away from our win rate because it was a lot of volume testing. I think one of the things you were also mentioning is the cost of that, right?
It was exactly that. So we're having actually this talk or this chat because we were going for, I mean, there's an exponential output of possibilities that you have with AI. And while we were trying to get more and more winners, this actually ended up impacting our win rate because we had so much to test that we were just producing stuff for the sake of producing.
Yep.
And that had obviously a budget associated to it because you have to test every single creative, but also time because we're not a big team, so everything has to be done manually. I know that some of UA managers probably here have fancy tools that everything gets uploaded and everything is automated. We don't have that luxury. And it represented also time that we could be dedicating to other things.
So that was a key takeaway, a learning, in fact, of something if you want to pursue, not to increase your win rate. It did help us find winners, but it opened up another topic of how can we then spin that around and actually improve our win rate as well as finding those winners. So the third takeaway here, because these were human ideated concepts or iterations too, is that human bias is difficult to remove, which is why we went down that route of, okay, let's go in volume testing. So what came next was, can we predict those winning concepts? So instead of producing all of them, even though the lift of production was maybe not very high, the cost of that was high. So our hypothesis was, can we, in short, was can we predict that? Our process was providing context. So in this case, we use an LLM similar to ChatGPT, providing context of the problem we're trying to solve. Setting the challenge of, I've got this hero concept, this is what it looks like, generate me a high volume of assets to test, and then refine it, tell me which KPIs is gonna have the highest impact on CTR and CPI to allow us to then fine tune and only test 5 assets of iterations on these hero concepts. So what we saw, we did this in 2 tests for two games with Bytro, taking this hero concept, and in this case for this hero concept, the recommendation was test the intro, this is what's going to drive the highest impact. And what was really interesting is that we did see a lot of impact, and we actually saw a very high impact on CTRs. So one concept actually almost doubled the CTR compared to that control ad with only an intro test. Naturally, you can see there's quite a big difference in these intros which you can do. I definitely recommend for anyone to also explore what you can do with intro testing. It's definitely kind of a nice entry point. But these didn't have the same sort of IPM impact overall. Do you have any ideas maybe as to why?
I mean, you can see the intros, right, and they're very, very flashy. So maybe to summarize it, it was not. And you can see the IPMs, right? The IPMs are not where we want to be, but I wouldn't label it as a total failure because CTR is actually impacted. So there's maybe something here to be explored. We can talk about next steps, which is already a good thing. Maybe we can talk about how the stores could look like. So it is a start, I would say. And connecting with something that we did the previous test. It's not a winner, right? It's not the next hero creative, but it is something that could help us extend that period of the hero creative that we had previously until we find the next hero creative.
Yep. We are at time. The other results for the other tests were fairly similar. And just to run through these takeaways, what we saw is that these AI iterations can drive CTR impact, but the best combination from finding winners was this human and AI approach. And that the best outcome of this is that means we can focus and spend less of our energy on iterating and fighting creative fatigue and spend more of that time focusing on a new concept production, more out of the box thinking.
We probably don't have time for the discussion. I'm afraid not. But we're going to be around here, so if you want to have the discussion with us and give us your tips for the win rate, and we can also have a discussion with you, we'll be around.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you.